like to call the meeting of the Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors to order. September 18th, 2024. We're at the Fairfield Center School, and we need to do an agenda review. A couple of items need to be added to the agenda. One of them both under old business, 7 old business. D, understanding Maple Run cost drivers, and E, legal matters, and we'll need to go into executive session for legal matters. So with those changes, can we accept the agenda? Any issues? Hearing none, the agenda is accepted with changes. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance to the flag.
It's over there, sorry.
Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
You need a bigger flag.
Next item on the agenda is the visitors. Do we have any visitors in the room that wish to speak? I'm seeing none. Do we have any visitors online that wish to speak?
I've posted online, Nilda, but no response yet. And actually, I'm just noticing it's all employees in attendance tonight, online.
Okay. Thank you all. Then we won't address anything in the visitor section at this point. And we'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from August 21st and media packet. Any issues with pulling anything out for discussion? Hearing none, the agenda is accepted without objection. Next is the reports to the board. Student board representatives report. Students, Jacoby's there, and one other person who I can't remember.
Marie.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi everyone. So today, Voice Committee, which is the group that sends representatives to the board, we had a meeting. And it was just a couple of us, and it was good to get a chance to talk with Mr. Kimball for the first time in like a meeting and sort of get the scoop on what the board is going to be doing this year and things like that. And then we also were like, well, why don't we center our work around the board goals this year? And so the next couple of weeks, we're going to be taking our meeting time to figure out what projects are going to go into each goal that we do. And then also figure out how we can like measure their effectiveness with data, and then also make sure that there's not so much projects that we can't handle it, but that we're actually doing something to make a difference.
Yeah, and we've also been working on drafting a grant request to get more funding to hopefully expand some of the programs we've been doing to the middle schools and also start new programs.
Nice. Any questions for our students? Thank you so much. Next item is under reports to the board is B, rigorous academics and expectations. We have John and Alexis and some instructional coaches here to review this with us.
That's right, and I am going to get us started, but I'm very quickly going to invite my friends here to help. And so you'll notice, actually, this is a different format in terms of the presentation than what we've used before. What we've done, as Superintendent Kimball shared 2 weeks ago in our last meeting, was to take the format from the strategic plan and work to weave that through the reporting structure. So now what this will do is give us a new focus on the connection between what has been identified in the strategic plan and the work that's happening every year and the results that we're able to collect in terms of data. So at the end, really interested in any feedback members of the board have on the presentation format. One thing to note is that in the transition to this, we may actually change some of the traditional reporting format. So for the past few years, Alexis and I have always worked with a group to present all of the spring data together. So that would include things that are related to behavior, attendance, and social emotional learning, as well as the academic measures that we have. And given the structure of the strategic plan, those may be reported separately going forward, but that's not reflective of any lack of collaboration or even integration between the measures, just the reporting structure from the strategic plan. So just at the beginning, you'll notice that we have a recap of the goals that are in the strategic plan. And then we get into this the goal here that we have for tonight, which is rigorous academics and expectations, where we're looking for students to feel challenged and supported to excel. Right, to sum it up, there's a lot up here, but I won't read it word for word. The meat of this report, however, is really focused on the evidence of success category. So we have 3 areas here where we'd identified for evidence. One really talking about post-secondary outcomes, one about supervision and evaluation for teachers, and then the other about curriculum and high standards for all students. So that's the category, the way that data is categorized for tonight. And sorry, there's a lag between my screen and up here. The first one actually is a good one for us to talk about versus report out on. So this is a newly articulated desire from the community to really collect more data about post-secondary outcomes and the satisfactions of our students as they're leaving us for the world beyond secondary high school. But this is data that we have not been collecting. And so we really don't have data to present on this metric right now. But really what I have up here just is this idea of the agreement check and looking for that direction from the board that we should begin collecting this data. I'm happy to pause and talk about that if people want.
I'm really glad that this is actually being discussed, because this is something that I was struck by at graduation, was the amount of seniors who did not attend graduation, the amount of seniors who did not come up and get their diploma. And I would love for us to be more curious about that. And if it's because they went on a trip somewhere, you know, clearly that's not a negative situation, but I was definitely struck by that.
My question is, I know we list several things like graduation rate, post-graduation rate. At what time frame are we gonna be asking the students this question? Is it right after high school? You know, a couple years later, ask, you know, some follow-up on that. How are we gonna measure, you know, college acceptance, you know, apprenticeship, etc.?
The shorter answer is that I don't know right now. There's several different models that schools use to collect data like this. And what I would say after tonight, really, what should happen is Dr. Kimball and I should have a conversation with BFA and NCTC about how we bring a group together to actually come up with a plan to collect this.
That's a great idea.
I would add into there that BSAC, but it's a limited group, tracks all this, but it's becoming a smaller and smaller sample every year. So it's, while we get the reports from them, it's not necessarily an accurate report.
Right.
The state of Vermont uses the example reports in the feds, these figures. And so it's not somewhere in the 40 or 50% of the kids at best.
Do we have, and I'm not asking for them right now,
Yeah,
just asking, do we have it? Do we have numbers on who came, how students who came in 9th grade, you know, incoming students for 10th grade, 11th grade, and then who graduated and, you know, who left, but then who did not successfully?
So Vermont requires that, Vermont actually collects, the Agency of Education, specific, collects that data for us and publishes us a 4-year and a 6-year graduation rate. Because they have to publish that to the federal government. So they take our data from enrollments and graduations and cross that for us, so that's something we look at. I wonder about the other.
Of course, people
Yeah.
leave for lots of different reasons. That's why I was just wondering
Yeah.
if we were tracking, right, when someone leaves, I was part of that group, the truancy group, and so I created a form when a student was leaving our school as well as a student was coming in, to be able to give to that sending school or to be able to give to the next school that they were going to. So people had that information, so we knew where people were going. And, for what reason, if it was because they were moving or because there was mostly because of moving geography was driving reason, but it was really good information to have.
So based off of the statements and nonverbal cues I'm reading from the room, it seems like we're in agreement for moving forward with us. Okay, perfect. Well, then, this next one is super exciting because we are in the middle of it right now. So, this was a supervision and evaluation system for all teachers. And we've previously reported to the board, but I have some highlights from that today to share some of the key elements of the new supervision evaluation system, which has launched with the opening of school this year. So there are a lot of requirements for evaluation systems. A lot of them come from federal rule or regulation. But at its most basic element is the requirement that they be research and or evidence-based in certain areas. And so I thought it was important to actually reference explicitly the works that we drew all of our material from. One is from the AOE's document around the vision for teaching, learning, and leading. The other two key pieces of or source pieces for us were the Danielson Revised Framework for Teaching, which was revised for 2022. That is the most common framework for teaching in the United States and also here in the state of Vermont. And then there's a really incredible book of which I have some copies if anyone wants one, published in 2021 from Marzano Research, which is basically an inventory of all of the evaluation practices that gained traction since ed reform mandated them, and which ones have been working and which ones haven't been, and then basically trying to attribute some causality to why some have been shown to work and others have not. Super clear, concise, and practical book. Very interesting if you're into teacher evaluation and development. If you're not, it might put you to sleep. But we did draw from all of those to make sure everything that we designed met our legal requirements, but also is based off the overwhelming evidence around what is working in this realm right now.
So there's nothing, Earl, more up to date than a 2018
From the state?
from the state?
Well, then that's not entirely true. So the state periodically publishes information or resources.
And we're using that.
But yeah, so anything that has been published has been reviewed by the group that designed this system. But their official, like the anchor document for everything is still this 2018 document.
The prior one was 2008, I believe.
Yeah.
I was
it's
not
not.
sure.
So takes a while.
It's about once every 10 years.
So this is really here, this is a link, and I'm not going to go through the attached documents, many pages. But actually this is a focused framework. So the Danielson framework, the Marzano framework, all of the big frameworks have thousands of pages. And one of the key practices, or actually one of the key practices that were shown not to work was to use the entire framework because it is overwhelming, right? So if you're looking at one of these frameworks that has 30 to 60 components, and each of those components can have up to a dozen or 15 elements that nest under that, and each of those elements has performance indicators that go with it. having an evaluation system that focuses on every single one of those is overwhelming and inefficient and has been overwhelmingly shown to not work. The key practice that's been shown to be effective is taking those frameworks, which are evidence-based, and conducting a review of your school district to say, where are the ones that we need to start with? And to pick those kind of foundational pieces to begin working across the district in an aligned way and having conversations about teaching and learning in a way that do not feel overwhelming to teachers or supervisors. And so we worked extensively with the Danielson group, they've been a real pioneer actually on how to take their framework and to focus it in a way that is meaningful. Because many of these elements have like a precondition or a required foundation. So you can't start at the ones that might seem most exciting if you haven't gone your way through those foundational elements. And we selected 6 to start with for this year that span from instructional practices to teacher professional development to culture, climate, and social emotional learning. So they cover those kind of core pieces for our craft. And the other piece that we took and really ran with was this idea that new teachers or teachers who have been identified as needing support actually do need lots of support. And they need a really rigorous evaluation system that should actually be more work for the supervisor and for the teacher than any of the systems that are commonly in use. So we developed where phase 1 is where our new teachers land by default, or teachers that need extra support. And we even have teachers who this year have volunteered to go through this phase 1 personal evaluation plan and give us feedback on how it works. But it starts with self-assessment and goal writing. And then it has various other components beyond the traditional sit in a classroom and watch 1 or 2 whole classes. It involves things like reflecting on written artifacts. It involves things like numerous conversations between the supervisor and the teacher, but then also more frequent, but fewer minute observations, walkthroughs where a principal could be in a classroom for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, but still actually give useful feedback to the teacher on what they observed during that time. So it kind of breaks that idea that every observation has to be for an entire class period. And that is counterbalanced with what a veteran staff member might need. And so there's actually a huge chunk of that book from Marzano Research is actually written on how traditional evaluation practices are disenfranchising our veteran teachers who don't need that much support on a regular basis. And so there's a lot of again, this is all cyclical because when I started in education, I'm sure it was the same for Bill, this idea of evaluation cycles was really big, where you might only have a full evaluation cycle once every 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then in between you were doing more independent professional development. You see echoes of that in this research that's been published in 2021 about having veteran staff members work together in small groups and really set an intention around something they want to either get better at, a problem that they want to solve, and then helping them mobilize some resources around that. So the teachers are really in charge of identifying where they want to develop, what kind of feedback they need in order for that to be meaningful, and then kind of charting that path. And the role of the supervisor really becomes a role of a kind of a thought partner / coach / resource provider for those teams. There's a lot of cautious excitement, I would say, from teachers around this idea, and this is still counterbalanced with the need for everyone to get an evaluation. So once every 5 years, our veteran staff will go through that full phase 1 evaluation cycle, where they go through all those fundamental steps and have much significantly more supervision and feedback than they do during professional growth. Yep. Sorry, I just want to make sure it was the last slide. So I'm happy to pause before we get to the really exciting thing, which is talking about our student data. But to see if there are any questions on this. We could spend days just talking about teacher evaluation, and I would love every minute of it, but I recognize that we have more exciting things as well for tonight.
I would just like to make a positive statement. I've noticed like as the first tests have been going out, teachers have been like on the back of the test or something like asking students to either write like an area that they still need help on, an area where the teacher can provide more help, or like an area for growth for the student and the teacher, or like what went well. So I think that is a positive, like already incorporating some student feedback like right after a test and it's fresh in your mind.
I love that. Move on. So I promised exciting pieces, and I promise this will not disappoint. And I do have some really important colleagues that I want to introduce to everybody first. They all have different roles at different points, but maybe if you could just stand up when I say your name so that we can put faces and names together. We have two of our instructional coaches that are here from Town School. So Tammy Chambers, who's our math coach, Tammy. And Julia King, who's joined us this year as a literacy coach. We have Stacy Tully, who's an instructional leader and interventionist here for literacy at Fairfield School. And then Kaylee Garso, who is a middle school literacy teacher here and also the coordinator for our district literacy committee, which is a new role for this year. And of course, everybody knows and loves Alexis, who's going to be walking through some of this data with me.
Could have just ended at nose.
So this is a little bit of a review, but this is important. So when we set our objectives and our key results for last year, these were the success measures that we were really striving for by the end of last year. So this is all spring 2024 data. And every one of these would have represented significant growth for us as a district. And we are sourcing the data from multiple different platforms or areas. And so I think it's just important to point out that we do keep track of this, and it does change every once in a while. For example, we'll hear in a little bit about the new math program we have. And so some of our sources for our math data will change. But we have been trying and been actually we're pretty successful, I think, in establishing a consistent set of data that we can make comparisons between over time. And when we look at the dashboard with this data on it from last year, this is the same dashboard that I presented at the end of last year. But we did that in a very quick and rushed way. We wanted to share the news about the data that we had, but we didn't really have time to unpack it in that meeting. And so you can see, I'll just highlight literacy and math, and then maybe Alexis, you can walk us through the other data. Does that work? Perfect. So in literacy and math, you can see consistent growth between the different grade levels from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. There's one thing that's really important to note about all of these assessments. These are progressive assessments. I've mentioned that before here, but I think it's always important just to come back to that, because a progressive assessment is different than when you look at like our state assessment data, right? Which is kind of static. It's a snapshot in time based off of the end of the year's results, right? What the target is for the end of the year. A progressive assessment in the fall, if 60% of the students, or let's say, so if I look in where we were for literacy, K to 5, 31% of the students were on grade level. A progressive assessment then, if we fast forward to the spring and every student had learned approximately 1 year's worth of material, we would still see 31% of students on grade level. Because the assumption is that the students will progress 1 year. So that would mean the percentage of students on grade level don't actually change, because the program is not really assessing students at the grade level end of year expectations in the fall. It's assessing them based on what they should know entering the grade level. So to see then that we have areas where we're growing from 31 to 43%, or 17 to 31, 13 to 41, and from 3 to 5, that is showcasing that students are actually growing substantially, or learning substantially more than 1 year's worth of math and literacy in a year. So that's just kind of always that disclosure that comes with progressive assessments.
So just making sure that I have an understanding. So on grade level in fall, if you're looking at a third grade classroom, on grade level would be reading at a level that you would expect from a third grader coming into like a new third grader. And at the end would be basically the reading level equivalent to a new fourth grader because they're moving on fourth, which is.
So I'm gonna say yes, but there's like a little like data asterisks that go with that. And this is actually one of the problems that comes with reporting out on grade level, percentage of students on grade level, because that's actually a pretty imprecise measure. So it's useful because people understand it very quickly, and it's good for looking across a huge population and measuring the health of our system. But it lacks a little bit of the specificity to be able to say exactly what you just said, but that is the gist. So at the start of the year, you would be looking for students to be closer to the end of their previous grade level or the beginning of the year standards level of mastery. And then at the end of the year, they would really be, if the 43% of students K to 5, they would be mastering the end of that grade level's standards, maybe even some of the beginning of the next year.
So using the third, like the numbers up there, so and again, just sticking with that third, so fall 2023, 31% of incoming third graders. Not exact numbers because it's across the whole K-5, but 31% will read where we would expect a beginning third grader to read. And then, end of the year, 43% reading where we expect the end of third grade.
Yes, exactly.
Can we talk about how special education plays into this?
Yeah, this is, so there's there has been a lot of controversy in the state about special education students and accommodations and assessment. And that is because when the state changed to the new assessment system 2 years ago, there was conflicting guidance on what kind of accommodation students could get for what task. And so the big one was about read aloud, right? So some students have an accommodation where they can have directions or even part of a problem read to them, usually because they have a disability or the area of growth that really needs to be addressed in their reading comprehension. Now, a lot of that assessment and literacy is actually assessing a student's ability to read. And so the standard practice in special education testing and across the country is that you would not get a reading accommodation if the intent of the assessment was to determine how well you read. But that was actually not the way the guidelines from the state were written. And then after they were published and after accommodation plans are submitted, they changed the guideline to come into compliance or to come into the norm for the rest of the state and for best practice. And there was a pretty public at the time, I don't want to call it a crisis, but kerfuffle, or I'm not sure the right term about what to do. And so in the end, they ended up giving those reading accommodations to all students. Which is why we have not been referencing the state testing data from that first year. For that reason, and for many other hiccups that happened during the implementation of that new testing, none of that data is actually reliable or valid for us.
Okay.
So it almost feels like that sparked a controversy in all of our schools about what kind of accommodations students get when they're taking other assessments, not just for Maple Run, but across the state. And so we follow the guidelines for literacy. We're using DIBELS-based assessments. So we follow DIBELS-based assessment guidelines, which really limit the number of accommodations students get if those accommodations are related to literacy. In math, it's a little bit more open because the accommodations are traditionally not related directly to mathematical computation. But that ties in with instruction because the expectation is for all of our programs and in all of our classrooms that students are accessing grade level material. And so there's been a bit of a transition from talking about how we can either modify or remove students from grade level instruction to meet them where they are, to saying, how do we keep kids in grade level instruction and support their access to it? So those are kind of two related conversations, one about instruction, one about assessment that have been happening. And I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. So are you saying that aside from that first year data, do you feel like this data is representing special education students' ability to progress?
I think the data accurately identifies where the students are. And
With accommodation?
with appropriate accommodations, and I'm being careful about my word choice just because of that context I just shared.
Yeah.
And some of the biggest growth we have seen since the implementation of our new literacy program is actually with students on IEPs.
So even if they are not on grade level, their progress adds to this growth? If they're on an IEP?
Yeah.
Well, so this isn't, so it's funny because I'm focusing on the growth because I think that's really where we should be celebrating the efforts of our teachers. But this is not technically a growth measure. You can see growth looking at this, but this is really just telling you how many kids are reading on grade level or how many kids can do math on grade level. So a student that maybe grew 3 years worth of, had 3 years worth of learning, but is still below grade level, hasn't actually changed these metrics at all. And that's one of the problems with this kind of metric.
Right, because it doesn't take into consideration that they're not on grade level.
John and I had an hour conversation.
Okay.
Right.
And I'm biting my tongue because this is work I did for like 20 years as an assessment expert.
Right.
But we have to give, I'll give you an analogy that Aaron Rushlow and I talk about all the time as our communication expert. I'll write something and she's like, Bill, you've got your doctoral tone in this. You want everyone to read this, it's got to get to a place where everyone can understand it. The same is true with assessment literacy. Yep. The assessment expert in me is saying that this data is the wrong way to look at it. But we need to give you, and John and I were actually talking about this, and we'll have to talk more as a board, that there are ways we can educate you to a board to look at growth metrics. But it means you're gonna have to understand a lot more about assessment.
But I just think that it would be important that when you do present this material, John, that you would explain it to a level where everybody here can understand it, you know what I mean? In terms of like, I asked my question, but that's just because I spent, 23 years in education. So when you're not in that, you're looking at this and this is scary. But if you understand that there's a lot of confounding variables in here, then
Your point is really well taken, and I think it's funny, the coaches and I have conversations like this all the time because we want to move really quickly. But I think we've had some conversations recently where we've been reflecting on the growth over the past couple of years. And I mean, it's amazing when you think about, we used to have single-digit percentage of kids on grade level in our early literacy areas, which was, really kind of crisis level data that we were looking at. But if you go back a couple of years, we had a more than a decade-long trend of declining literacy and math rates across all of our grades. And that's true for the state as well as for us as a district. And so your point about the data being alarming is true. This is still data that alarms all of us and that we're concerned with. But I think that last year it was a huge celebration, or 2 years ago it was a huge celebration when we stopped the decline. And last year, actually, I think this data does still represent a huge success for us as a district.
yeah, I don't see it as not a
Yeah.
success. Please don't hear that. I'm just simply saying, I think it's more of a success than what is articulated.
I agree.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. Alexis, I'm gonna hand it to you.
So, kind of very similar to what John was explaining around the literacy and the math results. Obviously, you can see the percentages in the data up there in the areas of attendance, behavior, and social emotional learning. Some additional context that I think is important to this conversation that is not up here on the slide is when we talk about 9 or fewer absences with respect to attendance, those are both excused and unexcused absences. So sometimes in the past, when we presented this information, people make an assumption that we're only talking about unexcused absences. And our success measure is all absences in general. So again, we're looking at a totality of excused and unexcused in that category. For behaviors, again, this question has come up in the past during these same conversations. Our benchmarks are 4 majors or less, but chronic minors equate to a major. So a lot of times people have asked, well, what about the students that have maybe no major behaviors, but they have chronic minors every single day? We've aligned how we're tracking and defining that data across the district, where 3 minors equates to 1 major in the same day for the same behavior. So that would be captured as a major referral instead of multiple chronic minors. And then the SEL data is taken directly from our student social emotional learning survey that we do twice a year. We do it once in the fall, and then we do it once in the spring for all of our students that are in grades 3 through 12. And we have actually administered that survey. I think we're going on our 4th. This will be our 5th school year, so we've done it for the past 3 or 4 school years. So you'll see every area except for attendance is showing growth and is showing progress at varying degrees. And then obviously attendance is our one category where we are not showing and seeing the progress, obviously, that we would like to see as a district. And again, with the exception of the SEL data, the attendance and behavior data reflect pre-K through 12. So those are all of our students throughout the district. SEL is the only one that starts at grade 3 and goes to grade 12.
What does the SEL entail? I'm saying maybe thinking I'm not familiar with what that is.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so we use Panorama. So Panorama is a evidence-based platform, and it comes with predetermined questions in many different categories. So when we administer our surveys to students, we get to choose what topics and what categories we want to assess in that school year. So for example, in the past, we have focused on connection and belonging and safety. We have made the shift last year. We started to continue to assess connection and belonging, but then we added more competency-based questions around how well are students able to regulate their emotions? How are they able to demonstrate self-awareness and self-management which all aligns with the CASEL 5 domains of social emotional learning. For this success measure dashboard, though, the leadership team has chosen to focus on our belonging question as our success measure. So that question in particular is worded as, do you have at least one adult at school that you can count on and go to no matter what? So we collect a lot more data in our SEL student surveys, but the data that is reflected in this table as our one success measure is the response rate to that question. And when you talk about a favorable response, for that question in particular, their options are yes or no. So obviously the only ones tagged and marked as favorable are the students that answered yes to that question of at least having one adult in the school building they can go to no matter what.
Can you, so we're hearing about the assessment piece, but what about implementation of curriculum, you know, so you have the data, then what are you doing about it?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and that's where John and I kind of talked prior to the board meeting. And I feel like I could give an entire presentation to the board on SEL and all the work that has been done. And that we are moving forward with doing. So I am happy to add that to a separate board meeting with a separate topic and really get into the weeds with you all around that. We actually have, we just had a.
Right here.
We actually just had our first district SEL committee meeting, so we have a district committee that meets once a month, that has representation from pre-K all the way up to 12. And it has multiple roles represented on that team, from counselors to administration to classroom teachers. And we actually just reviewed our draft implementation plan for rollout for the next 3 years around social emotional learning. That went to the leadership team during our retreat in June. And we bumped it back to this district committee this afternoon for final comments, edits, and revisions. So we have a lot of moving pieces around identifying a curriculum, piloting a curriculum, rolling out an entire competency guide where we're going to start assessing student skills in all of the five CASEL social emotional learning domains. So we do have a 3-year implementation rollout plan that would answer all of those.
So currently, is there any curriculum being administered to students?
We have not aligned on a curriculum yet with social emotional learning. Every school is doing their own type of thing right now in regards to that.
So there is curriculum being administered
Yes,
at each of the schools, but it
Yes.
is not in 11 yet.
correct. And at varying degrees, and how they roll that out looks very differently, which is one of the big pushes to create. We're doing all of this alignment work, pre-K 12 across all of our buildings, and that is one of the big areas around how are we assessing students' social emotional learning progress, and what are we using for that curriculum and those tools, because it looks very different depending on where you are and what grade you're in.
Alexis, can I add something?
Sure.
Okay.
I also want you to know that in addition to, our next 3-year plan, the past 4 years, we have been working on restorative practices and, having trainers in-house to train the staff. And when we look at those, the data of the 80% up to the 83%, I would love to think that that has something to do with our strong presence with restorative practices that we have in the district.
And the only other piece that, thank you, Stacy, that, sorry, can I add one more piece? So with the SEL, our data, what is also not up here, what Panorama gives us is it gives us national benchmarks of where we are measuring in the country. And so even though our local data is saying 83%, we're actually in the 90th percentile for the country in that area in particular, with a sense of belonging for our students.
Huge. Speaking of other things that are great to celebrate, one of the things that we've done is, and we've got some really great feedback from you all as a board on, instead of presenting an overwhelming amount of data about performance at each school and at each grade level, what we did was look for where we had statistically significant differences across the district in our data. And so what we've been doing to try and keep it more manageable is to report out on what those differences are. And you probably remember this chart being significantly fuller historically. And I think a great outcome of all of this work and this aligning that's been happening across the district is that we've really been seeing the difference in performance between our schools and between our grade levels and between our population subgroups shrinking and being eliminated. And so you can see here, actually, the only statistically significant differences that we have are outperformances by the Fairfield Center School. And so those differences that had historically been a part of our data reporting that had some schools underperforming the district have at this point been eliminated. Which is It's very easy to say, but that's actually a huge celebration for us as a district. Oops. And when we look at our student subgroups too, we are seeing a continuation of a trend that we've talked a lot about as a board, which is our free and reduced lunch eligible students. So those are that's our proxy for students, our low income families, or students living in poverty. Those are all different designators that the state uses for the same population. That is the group that reliably underperforms our other student subgroups when it comes to our academic measures for literacy and math. But very many of our other subgroups have over time also dropped off, which is a testament to the work that teacher teams have been doing to make sure that students are getting what they need. We do have one other group with an underperformance, and that's our English language learner students in literacy, and they are newly added to the list. And I can actually say we've done some work around that. We had a huge influx of newcomer students last year, which is not the historical ELL population for this district. And I think it is not surprising to me, knowing that fact, that that group has emerged here as an underperforming group for literacy. All right, so that said, I have way more exciting stuff, and it's all coming from people other than me. So I'm gonna have Tammy Chambers come up. Do you mind using the microphone, Tammy? And just give me a nod when you want me to move slides forward for you, okay?
Hi. So the last time the coaches were here with you was in the spring, and math was just getting ready to pick our new program that we decided on. And so at this point, we're implementing that program in K-8. We're getting to know it a little at a time. We've had a little bit of PD. We're going to get some more in October and later this year. So far, the feedback from teachers have been mostly positive, so that feels good so far. Our initial benchmark is almost complete. We have about 85% district-wide. That extra little bit is our kindergarten students who need a little bit of extra time they haven't even signed in. They're just learning all the pieces of that. So we're giving them a little extra time to get that done. We have talked a lot about using our program with fidelity and integrity. We really want to keep those core components of the program because we know that's very important for all students, but we also know that not all of our students are coming to us completely ready for that curriculum. So we are trying to really look at the integrity piece of giving our kids what they need in order to be able to access that grade level curriculum. Professional development, we're going to keep going with that. Like I said, October, and I believe later in the year we'll have another. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, because we have seen growth in math, but we hadn't changed our program, that I feel like is probably at the crux of that, is that we've been using math menu. And if you could go on, thank you. So this is an example of a math menu. And math menu really focuses on giving kids choice, creating purposeful offerings for them, and we want them to be independent. And during the time that they're working on their math menu, the teacher is able to pull small group and work with 2 or 3 kids at a time who might need support in order to access the curriculums. So some really cool things have been happening with math menu in the classroom. So it's a workshop model. So kids are very independent. They know what their expectations are, but they also have some choice in that. It's differentiated and individualized based on every student's readiness level. So we use our district assessments, the PNOA in K-1-2, to really look at what kids need in order to access grade level curriculum. And we would include supports here for them so that we can boost the areas we feel like they need to work on. So it's really just right practice for them in a system of MTSS. So we're looking at, for every single student, what do they need in order to access the curriculum, and what are we going to include in our menu so that they have that practice? And 3 core components we talked about, purposeful offerings. It isn't something that teachers are able to do ahead of time. It's something that we're gonna sit and look at the data right before, the week before, to look at what do our kids need next week. There's a lot of ways that the district is supporting teachers in this work. John, could you go on more? So over the past 3 years, 62 of our K-8 teachers have attended workshops on math menus through the All Learners program. And some teachers have continued on with that for all 3 of those years. Some teachers have had a level 1 training and others have had more in-depth training. One thing that I noticed about last year's data at SATEC was that as the folks who did coaching cycles with me last year, 75% of those people asked for me to support them in their math menu. So that was either helping them get it started in their classroom or enhancing their practices. And all math teachers have access to the online program called All Learners Online, which we've got math menu resources there that we can pull from. There's additional professional development for teachers there they can work through. And then we have connection there with other school districts and teachers that are using math menu really throughout the world. So when we look at that data and we look at the growth and we think what is different about what we're doing at K-8, math menu is really the biggest piece that we've collectively worked on together, and we have it in our classrooms almost 100% at this point. So I believe he's gonna come talk about some summer learning that we've done.
Stacy is.
Oh, Stacy, hi.
Just have a quick question on math menus. Math menu is still part of, with the new curriculum, it's still being used.
Yes, that's a great question. It's not in our math block because our math block is for our program, but we're doing it in other times during the day when kids have additional time to work on things that they need that's just at their level, like a wind time or something.
So we're just gonna share a little bit about the summer learning that happened, which I wasn't here for, but I'm looking forward to next year being a part of it. So with math, there were opportunities this summer for teachers to participate in practice with the Illustrative Imagine Math program that was new, and 42 of the educators did take advantage of that. In addition, the math committee worked on a pacing guide so that they could put together a pacing guide that would feel comfortable for the teachers, so they could feel that they had support in moving forward with that. So teachers had time to explore the program. They did a deep dive into the first unit, so they had time to plan and talk with the interventionists and special educators and really feel like they're ready to get going at the beginning of the year, which is wonderful. And then the pacing guide provides that overview of the whole year for them, so they kind of see where they need to be and how they need to move to keep on track.
And for literacy, more than 50 educators participated in a course called Mind Play, and that was out of the Stern Center. That focused on the foundations of reading, which are down here, the phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And then the week of new teacher orientation, there were 2 days of literacy, an Amplify crash course where new teachers could again dive into that first unit so they could start the year prepared, and then also a science of reading crash course. And I think the next slide is the rope.
Just before you switch to the rope, I just would be remiss if I didn't chime in here that this is a huge give on the part of teachers to give up time during the summer to come in and engage in this learning. And it's actually really incredible to see so many teachers consistently now for 3 summers in a row, giving up time to come in and take the Mind Play, that structured literacy course, or any of the math pieces. And you know, at the end of the day, when we're packing up and people are starting to leave, there's still a good number of teachers who are staying and meeting in teams to talk about how they're gonna take it and what they're gonna do with it next year. So it's been one of the highlights of every summer for me is seeing these teams meet and engage in learning together. And we, oh,
Before you move on.
okay. And we also talked about how we could take some of this and actually focus in on some of the specifics that people are learning. And so I asked Juliet and Stacy just to do that through the lens of literacy, because if we went deep on all the literacy pieces, we'd be here for quite a chunk of time more. And I think I know what Alexa's gonna say, so I'm gonna give it to her.
Yeah, I don't wanna forget about SEL over here. So we also had, I would say, about 35 educators sign up to engage in learning with respect to restorative practices over the summer. So we ran 4 full days of restorative practice training. And it was all by choice on the end of the professional, that they wanted to come in over the summer and engage in that learning before the start of the school year. So.
You know, just, so lots of times we learn things, right? We go to trainings, we learn things, and then we gotta make sure that we implement it in the school year. When in supervision, right? Are we giving parameters to teachers to say, you went to that restorative justice training, I wanna see you use that in X, kind of a way during the school year? Like, are we following up to make sure that people are implementing the learning that they have participated in?
So yes, and I'd say it's happening in 2 separate lanes at the same time. So one of these is we're working with committees to really thoughtfully design the professional development opportunities that we're sponsoring over the summer and at other points of the year. And those are really tightly aligned with the expectations that we have for how we're doing things in our schools now. And so, for example, the mind play, which you're going to get a little bit of a sneak peek into, which is that structured literacy course. That is the approach that we're using to teach literacy at Maple Run. And so that alignment is already so tight. The feedback that we get from people who've taken the course has been really wonderful. But on the other side of that coin is we have people who have actually, even prior to the adoption of these programs, taken many grad courses on the neuroscience of literacy and gone way deeper than we do even with these courses. And having the conversations be driven by the expectations for what we're doing in terms of literacy instruction has been helpful, because it honors the experience that those people have as well. It's not just you have to take the one course that we've identified, which has been great. On the other side, the supervision evaluation system does a heavy focus on personal development and the conversation between supervisor and professional in terms of what learning needs to happen and what learning has happened and what it looks like in practice. So,
I just have a quick
oh yeah.
piece from, as a coach, knowing that teachers have this common training, this common language is really helpful, because then you can go in and you can really talk to anyone. You're all on the same page. And so even though I wasn't here for that summer training, I have participated in Mind Play and have that same background. And so, we're able to come in and have those conversations and reinforce that through the coaching as well.
So this is Scarborough's rope, and it shows you the 2 different parts of reading. We have our word recognition, which is the phonological awareness, your decoding, your sight recognition of familiar words. And then we have our language comprehension up here, which is making sure the children have background knowledge, building their vocabulary, their language structures, verbal reasoning, and then literacy knowledge. And then all of these intertwine. They're independent of one another, but they all intertwine and work together. And it gets tighter and tighter and tighter until you get a skilled reader who can read accurately, fluently, with strong comprehension. And this is what our new reading program, Amplify, does. And teachers are loving Amplify. They are seeing the results. We've seen the data, and going into it for the second year of full adoption has been really, really nice to see, because they're seeing it work now. They have the big picture of a whole year. And they're really excited for this year. We were ready. This is you.
So just to kind of reinforce the importance of that science of reading, that background, and that really explicit approach to teaching. A lot of neuroscience research has looked at, they can now do brain scans. And so they can look and see what is activated in the brain. And our brain has a natural activation to objects and faces here. So you can see that in the youngest children, you know, that's something that's natural to what we have. What we don't have as a natural part of our brain is understanding words. That's something that we have to develop over time. So what we have to do, or what we end up doing with this instruction, is that we help to build that and make those connections in that visual word area, the letter box, so that students can really become skilled readers. And I don't, there's the link right to this.
Yeah, what just opened up.
Oh, that's okay. I was gonna say, if you would like to learn more, you can click on the link, and it's really a great little video that will tell you more about the neuroscience. But just to remember, it's skilled readers are made, not born. You know, we need to provide the instruction for them and the support for them to become skilled readers.
So this video is fantastic.
Yeah.
Just for everyone to have its general understanding, and then if you're looking for more interest, if you have an interest in the context that has led to changes in reading instruction, there's a podcast that I plugged before called Sold a Story that kind of chronicles the dueling philosophies around reading, and then the fall of the Fontes and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins Reader Writer Workshop empires in the past couple of years. So if you haven't given that a listen yet, highly recommend.
There's a documentary I watched called The Right to Read. It was very interesting.
Yep, it's good. So Keely is going to give us a little snapshot into some of the most recent work that's happened related to literacy before we shift gears.
Great. So I'm happy to be here to represent the Literacy Committee, who has worked really hard last year to understand Amplify and make it work for our school, for our students. So we came together, came together over the summer, and we really focused on these 3 topics. First, looking at the standards, which the district's high leverage concepts that were identified, looking at them to make sure that they were all in each unit for grade levels, each grade level, and that they were taught and assessed consistently through the whole school year. So we created a spreadsheet that outlined each of these essential concepts. So we could really look at it and see where and when these standards were taught. And then we focused on accessibility, which was really trying to break down these barriers where students could access the grade level curriculum. After spending a year with this curriculum, we really were able to look into certain lessons and be like, well, a lot of students struggled with this concept. How can we create organizers, create paragraph frames, sentence starters to help them be successful for writing? So that was really rewarding work. And we created a document where all teachers can access these tools, and it's connected to our pacing guide. And then the last one is the one that I'm really most proud of, which was looking at teacher voice and choice. So all last year we asked, I think we sent about 5 different surveys to classroom teachers, getting feedback on how is it going delivering this program. So we looked at that data, and we were able to really adapt the pacing guide for grades 3 through 8, and also for grades 6 through 8. And grades 6 through 8 in particular now has a lot more flexibility for teachers. But the flexibility doesn't come at the cost where we're not attending to the high leverage concepts. Like, those are still a main focus, but it allows for teachers to have a little bit more voice and choice, and allowing for that passion to come through. And this is an example, if you want to look at later, of like the changes that we did. Angie Fitzgerald really created a nice summary of all the changes. And then you can see the pacing guide itself. We actually revamped it because some of the feedback was, hey, it's difficult to like look at. So we created a color coded, we added more links. So really looking at what teachers needed.
Yeah, and I'll just say, this is a ton of work to collect data from the classroom teachers using this. We made you can see some similarities between the math program adoption and literacy. We spent our initial adoption with Amplify, doing it to fidelity and with integrity so that we could really understand all aspects of the program. Which, if we're being honest, not everybody appreciated. Some people really struggled with using the program to fidelity because we're used to having a lot more voice and choice in how we run our classrooms. But then this team, of which Keely and everybody else here is a part of, collected this data and spent the summer diving really deep into the program, working with program specialists and looking at the standards that we have that we need to meet and making the changes that we could to respond to that feedback. It was an incredible amount of work, but it has been so positively received. So I think that's a huge kudos to this group for doing that.
Oh, yeah, in that vein, when you're, creating accessibility for the teachers to be able to teach, do you feel that there's enough flexibility in terms of like UDL, making sure that you're able to meet all students where they are?
I think if you asked me that same question last year, I'd have a different answer. But now, since I've gone through the program and I am now really like able to take command of the lesson and really understand the objective, I do feel like I have a bit more flexibility. Yeah.
I wasn't sure where to ask this question. We keep talking about students beyond grade level, but I know they're students above grade level. How are we working this curriculum to make sure those students, because I know there's a big gap within learning for a lot of our classes, making sure those top kids are being challenged enough, focused in class.
Yeah, and excited and
Excited
engaged,
to
right?
learn.
Yeah. So I can talk about the 6 through 8 curriculum because that's what I'm really familiar with. Their Amplify has done a beautiful job adding challenge, so I can actually set levels. So not only adapting, but also challenging, where it gives the writing prompts, for example, are different, they're more challenging, requiring more citing of text. The vocabulary portion as well, giving them more difficult vocabulary words. So I think we're still exploring this program, and the more we learn about it, really, I think we'll be able to really reach all levels of it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. And crew, it's not just John, it's actually, I know it's a lot more than your friends, as you said.
Actually, if I'm being honest, I do very little of the work myself. It's mostly the teams of teachers and coaches that have come together to pull all of this off. And actually, to that end, I wonder if we might want to ask them if they want to be released from the meeting, since they're going to have kids in their classrooms first thing. So I got enough head nods that I feel like you guys get out of here and head home. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks very much.
Okay, no, we're gonna move on to old business.
Neil, the quick footnote is, we're running a little long, and we're wondering if we should table a couple items. I think Bill's identified a few items that might be tabled for next time.
Yeah, sure. What do you want to table?
So I was looking at this, Nilda, just wondering if we were trying to get it down to 45 minutes, we were aiming for an 8 o'clock, but can we table the organizational structure update? The cost drivers, which we added to the agenda, we could put that in the October 2nd agenda if we wanted to. The legal matter if we're quick, could take 10 to 15 minutes in executive at the end. And then we need to get to the ESP nominations and letter. And I need about 10 minutes, as I talked to you about on Monday, about the homeless encampment that's happening at City School under the superintendent's report.
So that boiled down to tabling items 7C and D.
C and D, that's correct. And I don't know how long we're gonna need for the mission and vision, so you might have to come back to that at a future meeting. We'll see how that goes. I just don't know where the board is on it.
Okay. All right, so great suggestion. Can I please have a motion to table items 7C and 7D to the next meeting?
I'll make the motion to come in.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, Charlie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Sure, yes.
Carly.
I don't know what I'm
Yes.
saying. I could yes.
Carly said yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mary Ann,
Yes.
Suzanne,
She stepped out for a second.
Hilda votes yes. We have a majority, so we'll table. Thank you for all of that. Okay, so moving back, old business. Plan for meeting board goals. So we discussed that over our last few meetings about members attending different events and then writing up one of those event reporting forms. This is a check-in. Does anyone have any events that they are planning to attend? And if so, please let us know now. If you don't know yet, obviously it's really early in the year and not all the events are on the calendars yet. But we will have an opportunity if anyone's attended an event at the end of the agenda to report out. So any plans for any events so far? Yes.
So, yeah, all of the cross-country meets.
Oh, great.
Yes.
You're really looking forward.
No, I love them, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I will definitely report back on that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Suzanne. All right, let's just move on. And obviously, I think you're all pretty aware now that this is what we're going to do. So it's just beneficial for everyone to report back. Next item on the agenda B is our mission vision community feedback review process. So we sent out, requests for commentary on the draft proposals that we had in place. We received responses. You have them in attachment 7B related to the mission and the vision. So the question before us is, do we feel ready to select the mission and vision based on the majority responses in this query? That's a question mark at the end of that. Yes, no, maybe. If it's a maybe, what would you suggest we need to do?
I think I just want a minute to read through the results. I didn't get a chance
I will say down at the bottom, there's a summary.
Yeah.
Okay.
That has either the comments, each comment listed with each one, or a summary of what people selected.
I'm not ready to
I'm not
accept
either.
it personally. I think that, it'd be great to make sure we try to put it out there to the community a little bit more. I know we did a first step, but I think that, the beginning of the school year is a really hectic time. And I think that we could give people a little bit more time and maybe try to come at it maybe in a couple of different ways. We could put the results out to people, because sometimes people will have feedback after they've seen what some results, are. But I'm personally not ready yet.
Is there agreement that we can wait?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do that and ask our administration to, get that out there, plaster the universe with this survey query and see if we can get more responses. Thank you.
Quick question.
yes.
Yeah, just have a quick question. So we have now 42 responses, and that's up from 2 weeks ago. I believe we were in the 20s.
We were like 31, 29,
31.
somewhere in that area.
Okay.
I wonder, open house or parent-teacher conferences will be coming up in the few
Yeah.
weeks. Is there any way we can have like QR codes or something out, like while parents are there, maybe parent,
That would be a good idea.
to the parents saying, hey, can you guys do this on your way out? And this way we're actually engaging with the parents at a Facebook scroll or for forum scroll.
I think that's a good. That is a really.
Like even if it's not necessarily like the teacher, but like a QR code somewhere in the thing that they can
Yeah.
see.
We can do that.
Great
idea.
We can
Great
take,
idea.
we can take responsibility.
So that's where I was gonna go next.
Absolutely,
Is
there's not
that
too much
I-
going on.
The mission and vision is owned by the board.
Yeah.
It's not owned, you know, we talked about the strategic plan, we talked about the goals and where those are. Our students last year really showed us how they did it. They went to a play, they stood there. So I would actually say a QR code sitting somewhere in a building is not gonna do anything. You like, I think of last night at City School, if someone had been standing right up front as people walked in and said, hey, just go, which one of these do you like best?
Yep.
Okay, and
You give
I
people
can give you, I
stickers,
can
they
give
can
you
walk
all
out.
the, you can give them stickers, that's the way the hospital did it when they did their community needs assessment.
Yep.
And so, you know, I could get from you when those community events are happening. But I have to give a little pushback back to the board. I need you on the ground with this one. So, I'll get you some events and dates, and Jacoby's probably gonna even get an idea of how to do it.
Yes. I would echo that. We're gonna be at the play as our outreach thing again. And I would obviously encourage anyone who wants to join us there. And I'm wondering like if anyone has any like good solid ideas for maybe how we could incorporate student feedback into the mission and vision, so that students can have some buy-in into what the mission and vision of the board is. I mean, I could brainstorm like a later date and then come back next meeting. In the back of my mind, I think we can maybe have that, but get all students, not just Marie and I and the SVC involved.
And across all schools.
Yes, I think having buy-in from as many people as possible is the way to do it, and being, and like what Bill said, like everyone being in the ground, like QR codes are great, but even if you have someone standing right by the QR code, being like, hey, take this QR code, not just like, you see this paper, you're like, yeah, no, but maybe if you're standing there like, hey, take this QR code, it'll take you to a link, what one do you like better? That's even more effective than just a QR code, which is more effective than just a Facebook scroll.
Okay. Well, I appreciate all of this, and I think we can make this as complicated as we want. And at the end of the day, it, as Bill said, it's, you know, it's our mission and vision. The data that we have is not equivocal, right? When you're looking at the 42 responses, it's pretty clear what the answers shake out to be. But let's give it a few more, at least another cycle of meetings. And obviously, if we have a captive audience and can work on requesting feedback, we can get it. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is legal matter, and I would like to wait till the end of our meeting to address the legal matter, which will need to be done in executive session, I believe, according to the findings. Excuse me. Next is policy work. So we have 4 policies titles here. 2 of them are policies that we already have in place that we may revise, suggest revisions to, request that administration revise for us. And then we have 2 other policies that are example, they're policies that we should have, but do not currently have. And we have examples of those policies from other schools. So let's take them one at a time. And Bill, you can help us through this process, starting with class size policy and its associated procedure.
Yep. The class size policy that you see here leaves it up to the superintendent to give guidelines for minimum optimal average class sizes. In the state of Vermont, we have what's called our education quality standards, which recommend class sizes for grades 3 and below of an average of 20 or below 20, and for grades 4 through 12, an average of 24. So one of the things that I was actually, when I first came to Maple Run, was a little surprised that the board hadn't set it. Usually in most districts in Vermont, the board is setting the class size because for budgetary reasons. And as we all know, we're gonna probably see some challenges this year. So I want to bring this back to the board to see if they still want the superintendent to do that. I would actually urge you that the board, we should work together to set this. And that it really helps when we're unified. I don't think that it really helps for the superintendent to be the one to do that. And these are average, and that we have, when we looked at this as a leadership team, we talked about whether we should have one that is different levels for primary, elementary school, and then intermediate and middle school, and then high school. And we actually came back to having one that was 4 through 12 after looking into the research. I thought about this today driving up tonight, and I wish I brought it with me, but there's 2 research experts that have done meta-analysis on class size, John Hattie and Robert Marzano. We talk about Marzano's work a lot, and I can get you articles from them. I just want to remind the board, we've talked about meta-analysis research before. That's not a single research article. It looks at all the research that's been done in an area and tries to bring conclusions from all of those. Because in education research, you can find one study that probably backs whatever way you want to go in education. So you've got to be looking at those meta-analyses. I can give you the brief piece, and I was reading this the other day, and this is why I wish I had brought it with me so I could just read it to you. But there are studies that Hattie has done about what's the difference between a class size of 15 and 20, and it's actually found that when you look at all the different types of best practices that we can do in schools, it doesn't have that much effect on student outcomes. It's actually pretty well.
What about space? What about square footage? I mean,
So
are all the kindergarten classes the same square footage?
They're not all the same square footage, so that's something we have to take into account, but I know our building leaders would do that as we look into the pieces. And we're looking for an average. I'm not saying like everyone's the same, but I will tell you, last year, and I don't have the class sizes yet for this year, is that we range from 12 up to 28 to 30 in class sizes. And there were places where I walked around and I was like, this is getting a little small for diversity of thought for kids.
In the 4 through 12, Bill, or below? The
Both.
K through- okay. I was just asking.
Well, yep. And, you know, I'm not looking, I mean, Vermont, we're traditional, we think a large class is 24. If we were in other states, they're up in the 30s, and I'm not trying to get us up in the 30s. But one of the things that we're facing is, and we will have more data for you on October 2nd about what's happened for the different segments of our educational system for costs for this budgetary year, because Brianne's finishing that work right now with all the leadership team. But I also think the research is pretty clear about when you get so small, you're down to individual teaching. And so you don't have the power, there's power in learning with other students. The teacher's not the only teacher in the classroom.
Bill, just for reference, my daughter in Delaware has 32 students in her classes.
What grade is she teaching?
She teaches like middle school.
Yeah.
We cap out at 22 in Burlington and kindergarten classrooms.
I have friends in Oregon who are 27 in kindergarten.
Yeah. And unfortunately, when I've talked with many of the superintendents in Champlain Valley, we were talking about last spring, as they were the ones that were in some really budgetary difficult places with revotes. And they were trying to figure out how they did it when they had kindergarten classes at 22. So I want to make sure that there's 2 policies on here that are very important for me that we talk about before we get into budget season. Because we need the board's input and the board's standing on where you're at.
So Bill, my feeling is that, you know, you're the principal educator of our school district, and we should rely on your advice. But I agree with you that the board should weigh in on that. We should come to a conclusion together.
Yeah,
We should go home with some of the articles that you're talking about, you know, then that we can come back and have more of a informed, you know, conversation about it.
Is there a way to ask like especially teachers who've been teaching a while, what they found to be their ideal class size?
so you can. Teachers aren't gonna like my next statement. You get used to what class size you're in. That's no reflection on anyone and their teaching practices and how good or not. You just get used to it. And I know that's true for myself and when I was a teacher. And so that means that we have to give, if they were to increase, there would be, have to be professional development to support that.
Well, Bill, when I was a teacher, I had 120 in my class. Because I was the band director.
No, it just makes me nervous I mean, when my oldest was in kindergarten, it was very small. There was a teacher, there was a para, there was a volunteer grandma. She learned so much. And then a few years later, much bigger class, so many more behavior problems that the kids who wanted to really learn were not getting what they needed.
That's what I would echo about the behavioral problems, because we know there's more behavioral problems with our student population right now. And increasing class sizes increases the possibility of having more kids who need more individualized attention, and how would we?
I would disagree with you on
You
that.
do?
Yep. I would, the research actually doesn't support what you're saying. John, you're more steep in this research than I am.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even just anecdotally, thinking about some of the things we've seen in our own school district, in addition to what the research says, when you get down to really small class sizes, a lot of the times what happens is you amplify any kind of behavior that happens in the classroom. And you lose, it's a combination of that with the lack of diversity of thought and behavior in the classroom that can really, what you're really then doing is empowering one or two individuals in the classroom to control the culture and climate of the classroom. And so you often see, I forget the exact term, I've like colloquially termed it the spiral that happens in small classrooms sometimes. So it's a double edged. The sword can cut both ways, too big or too small.
So clearly, as a board, we're not the experts in this. How can we proceed to give our, input, educated input? Should we wait and get some of your Marzano and metadata analysis stuff to read? That can we guarantee everybody's going to read it? And or should we get a revision, a couple of versions of a policy from the superintendent or leadership team and react to that? Or should we do both? I don't know.
I think both. I think having the input of the staff and learning more about it may give us a better scope of vision, because just because we're hearing one side, we're still going ignorant into making a decision if we don't have understanding behind it. So I think having homework and reading is really important before we make a decision.
Yeah, and I mean, is the data post-COVID, because I feel like that's shifted a lot too, or is it older than that? And I would want to hear from the teachers and the principals as well. Just makes me nervous to make big classes.
So next step is?
I will get you the research articles and I'll get information from the leadership team.
Yes.
That's where I will go.
We'll go from there. Well, let's put this on the next agenda just so we don't lose it. We'll talk about it again. And let's move on, I guess, to the building use policy, Bill.
Yes, so in your building use policy, we have a lot of procedures that go with this. We were dealing with an issue that happened where we had a private for-profit company using one of our buildings. And I wanna make sure I protect that company, but at the same time, we had some issues arise, and I was working with Pedro Lynn, our attorney, and he asked me, why do we allow for-profit companies to use our space? Would you allow that for every for-profit entity in your 3 municipalities? He said it feels a little unfair to do that. And I didn't have a place in here that I could find that said that we couldn't use it to, and it's been we have a lot of nonprofits that use it. But it doesn't feel fair that we're helping one for-profit company make money when we're not helping others. And he was worried about liability for us. So I brought this to you with the advice of our attorney to be specific about not leasing our facilities to companies for profit for use of our facilities.
Bill, there is a section on line 37 of the policy that says that we may deny an application, blah, 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 for events or meetings of private for-profit entities.
I need it stronger than that, not may.
I agree, but there was language in here already that we could have denied.
We could have, but he said the board needs to be outright, no, none.
Oh, I'm down with that too. I agree. But I just wanted to
Yep.
show that. Okay, did he have any strong language that was suggested, or is it just straight out?
I'm sure I could get it from him. I didn't ask for it. I said I would talk with the board. I could bring that back as a revision with cultural language in there about for-profit.
Is there an example that we can think of that it would be okay?
I can't think of one. And that's what he asked me for. And there's been tradition that it has happened, and I'm trying to stop it.
Now, when for-profit companies use school resources, is that effectively the school, the district doing them a solid? Is there any benefit, like, is there any benefit that the district gets out of this, or is it basically just
Leasing the space.
Okay, so as it stands, certain businesses can lease space, and certain businesses either don't
Or don't ask, but we have a few that do, and Pietro Lynn really advises that, listen, you could get in the place of, why are you giving to this for profit, why aren't you giving to my for profit? Even though they might be paying for it, he said, my best advice for you is not to do it.
And that includes Collins Burley as well.
Great question.
That's a good question. That's a good question. I need to talk with Tim about what if we have, I know like we have Rotary, which is, but Rotary's a nonprofit. That's a nonprofit.
They also have like a Comic-Con there.
Yeah.
They have like a Comic-Con there that every year now, use that a nonprofit hosting it.
They have lots of things.
Well, so many things.
I'll work with Tim to see what we have for a list and see if there needs to be a call out for Collins Burley.
The RV thing, that's for profit.
But it's also an event center for our community too.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying that
so
we
it's
should
how do we?
say-
Right,
walk
but I
the
think it's a
fine
good
line?
question, like, yeah, I think that's what,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do we walk the fine
I
line?
didn't, what was her question?
About Collins Burley. And they,
No, I know, but what was the question? That was a good question that was just asked. I didn't catch it.
If it included Collins Burley, because it is used regularly.
It's
as
an event center
space.
for our community. It's one of the largest places to host an event, and we would.
Well, my feeling about that, in thinking, since you brought it up, is that the companies don't make money right there. You know, it's a
well,
home
I
show.
wouldn't wanna get into that definition. I'd rather have you say, if you did a call out for Collins Burley, to make a call out.
Oh, they do make money,
In the
but not
policy.
right there.
A lot
People
of
will buy a shed right there
People
to
do,
bring home,
there's
do they?
events there where you pay to get in. So
Yeah.
Comic-Con's one of them where you pay to get in and you go in and you. We love it.
All right, well, let's get Pedro's advice on it. And there's a bucket of other references too on this policy.
So I think it's a fine line between.
You need to,
I know a
you
I
need
am
to
not
review all of
commenting.
that.
And that's probably too much.
I just,
you carve it out. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
So,
All right,
Even SATEC has the antique show
yeah.
for Maple Fest. People are
so
selling
Maple,
antiques.
but yeah,
There's
people are selling.
individuals
Yeah,
selling things.
yeah, but the Maple Fest, which I've already looked into, is a nonprofit.
Right,
that
they
part.
are, but
So-
not the vendors.
Not the vendors, so.
But that point, the money is going, like,
Into
it's
their
different,
pocket.
it's different because the nonprofit's getting part of
Cut.
it. Cut.
Not all of it,
so
it will come down to legally.
Well, because the nonprofit's leasing it out, so people are paying to be there, so the nonprofit is making a profit and they're just like using vendors. So you're like subcontracting out, so that's different than if, a for-profit place set up a thing there. And that's the thing, we need to figure out how Concord fits in, because we
Right.
don't wanna lose that as an event center for our community.
It could be a profit for a charity too, so gotta split those hairs too. Okay, well, that'll be fun. Let's do some more research on that. Next item is teaching and learning policy. This is the one where we do not have one in place, but we have example.
Yeah.
And Bill?
I have had a chance to work with the superintendent of Mountain View, and her name just escaped me as her last name, but, she was talking to me about the budget. They had to go through 3 budget revotes last year. And one of the things that really helped them as they had to go through revotes was that the board the fall before had said, what are our priorities in teaching and learning? What are we here for? What are our big places? They didn't say that, we had everything, but, and this is an example, and it's one that, I'm not saying this is the example for us, but the idea of what are our places that the board sees as priorities within our whole system. And I want us to, this is gonna be a multi-meeting conversation, but it's one we need to probably finish by December. Because if you're gonna ask us as a leadership team to go and give you different models of budgets, we need some guidance on what the board's priorities are. And so this is an example. I will tell you that 1 and 2 come right out of the Vermont Education Quality Standards. And saying, basically, the first one is that literacy and math and you've seen that big push that we've done here. We've had that big push of social and emotional learning, which would be in 2 with the transfer. A lot of what you see when you see practice a series 2000 Education Quality Standards, you're getting into all the state standards in which students have to learn. And I would argue really highly that this social emotional learning standards fall under many of the transferable skills. But those are things that I'd like the board to think about. I don't want you to start naming it tonight, but to really say, these are the areas that are important to us. I know all the areas in which we offer support and learning for kids are important. It's just, we might have to go down this road, and this was a very helpful document to the Mountain View SU when they had to get into this issue. I'm trying to set things up for us, because we did in the educational session we had on Monday, talked to you about our staffing guidelines and targets. I don't wanna cut a single person around here, I don't wanna think about bigger class sizes, but I wanna have us have tools in case we have to go there that help us be ready, so we're not making last minute decisions in a really quick time. So I'm trying to set you up, but I'm looking for, and this is the second of the 2 policies for me that are important for us to discuss this fall. I hope that makes sense to everyone, but clear.
I just want, in terms of this policy specific, this is a, kind of signal of the importance of having mission statements. I think ideally we would adopt the mission statement, and that would help us guide the teaching and learning policy, because that's where, when we adopt the mission statement, we know what we want out of this policy.
Yep.
Okay, so next step on this equity topic is. You want us to think about what's important?
On the teaching and learning piece, I think what we need to do is maybe, Nilda, you and I and Charlie map out some board work, and then who we might need to listen to, who the board might need to have information for, to gather what goes into this, but I think Charlie did a great job of summing it up. The mission and vision will really help inform this.
Yeah. Okay, great. Moving on. So the next topic is the most wonderful time of the year. It is negotiation time.
We missed the equity policy. 8A4.
Okay, it's not the most wonderful time of the year. It's the equity policy. And we have attachment there that is another example of a policy from another institution.
Yeah. So yeah. So in the work that we've done with Creative Discourse Group and developing our goals and our goals, district goals and our strategic plan, along with the work that they did with, I think it was like 13 or 14 teachers, and I know Jacoby was part of this, some of our student voice, and looking at ways that we could provide supports for when harm and bias occur. One of the things that came out really strongly from that group of individuals and through our goals and mission was to look for an equity policy for Maple Run. And so I'm giving you two examples. There are many more out there. I grabbed Colchester's and Champlain Valley's as example of equity policy. And for me, it's asking how the board wants to do this. You know, there are many ways about going about drafting an equity policy, but we have staff telling us that they feel they need the support of an equity statement from this board, and that you do that in the form of policy. And so what I wanted to hear tonight was how do you want to get into this work? And one, the board could do it yourselves. You've had some input through strategic planning and goals. You could have some listening sessions during board meetings to talk about it. You could bring in a facilitator, have a discussion about it. Those are three possible ideas I thought of, but there could be others as well.
But it fits in the same thing that Charlie said, right? We need a mission and vision to be able to lock it all together. Yes?
Well,
I would agree that the mission and vision is essential to kind of helping us with the details. I think any mission or vision statement, definitely the two that we have out there, any other ones that we might provide is going to involve equity in some way. So I feel like that's an area where defining it and figuring out how to implement it is less fine-grained, because we know it's going to be a part of our mission and vision, in my opinion.
Okay. So do we need to bring someone in to lead a discussion?
have a DEI group, don't we?
We don't have a sitting group.
Oh, I thought there was a DEI district group.
No. I haven't been for some years.
Thoughts? More thoughts?
I can tell you what, I had the recommendation of the teachers that did the work last year as they were working on a response to bias and harassment issues, and trying to find a system to support victims and put that together. And I have that report that says this is the work. One of the things they feel they need is a policy of this, something like this.
Bill, is there an example from the School Boards Association?
There is not. I looked for one, unless, yeah, Aaron and I were going back and forth. There's not a suggested policy. What they came out was with their equity statement that's on our wall in our boardroom.
Okay.
That's, we're signed on by all the different Vermont superintendents, Vermont school boards, Vermont Principals Association, all signed on to that same statement.
This is a really big feat, and I actually don't know how to proceed for it, because it's an amazing document that we need, but I don't wanna, it's not something I want us to take lightly, and so I actually don't know how to proceed on this. Anybody has an idea?
I I would recommend a facilitator if we're having trouble figuring out like what we're thinking about right now, then I feel like we should have a facilitator come in and help kind of stoke our brain fires and get some things rolling, and then I think it will come more easily.
I think as usual, Jacoby's on point, so.
There are folks that work with school districts that help do this. That's why I was asking, there's kind of that gamut.
Yeah.
And we have all that work already done.
We have all the work we've done.
So somebody might be able to go through and go through just the outcomes of all of that work and help to hone in on options. And then we can also look at existing policies and see how they correlate with our data.
I almost hate to say this out loud, but should we have a policy subcommittee?
I've seen it go back and forth here.
So there's two ways, I go right where Joanna, is what you just said, Joanna. There's good and there's bad to that, and I think that's something that maybe we'd wanna take more time than maybe we wanna give tonight at 7:45 for work we need to do. But there are some policies, the equity one, I agree with what Nakuma said. I think taking some time to get it right is important, and having someone have to do that work and help us do that work is important.
Right.
And so, you and the three of us, when we met to prep for the meeting, Nellie, you and I, Charlie, talked about this, that there are these kind of three different paths. I think it's important to get it right in our time for our community to have the pieces. And I agree with you, Joanna, there's a lot of input that we have from our work this past 2 years, but I think it's good to have someone work on that.
And they can help us decipher through all the work. We've been doing work for quite a few years.
I even wonder if both the creative discourse group, if they have all their best practice or, sorry, it's getting late.
That's right, that's why I say it's 7:45.
If they have
Right.
what are the ones, best practice policy or?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
what it is?
Model.
I don't think so.
Model policy.
Model policy, that's what I was looking for us to look at as well.
Yeah, and they would have all the data from the
Yep.
multiple meetings and be able to present it. I mean, I like the Colchester one. I think it'd be interesting to compare the language there to what we've captured in the community
Right.
and see if it aligns.
Yeah. Or we could use
So
that
the
language.
one thing I would say about the creative discourse group is helped us a lot. There are other people that have done this work with thinking about the
policy.
school policy.
Okay.
And so I would actually advise you that we'd probably be looking for someone else.
Okay.
I think we can use what we learned through creative discourse, decipher that.
And we have all that
somebody else
data.
help us with it.
Yeah, we have all that. Okay, I will work on, find someone who can help us out.
I have one more quick question. So in terms of budget work, the teaching and learning policy is an essential part of helping direct our budget. How much of an impact is the equity policy have on the budget, or is that something that can be developed in parallel while we're also doing budget
I
work?
think it can be while we're doing budget work and after. I don't think there's a link.
Okay.
I think one of the things, when I look at a lot of these two and I look at the implementation sections, I think there's a lot. Are there things we can do better? Yes, always in equity. I think there's some things that we're already trying to do, but it's good for the board. The board speaks with their policies. And so this is about the board saying this is where we stand as a board.
But equity would have a place in budget as well, in terms of special services or.
Yeah, and in terms of the practice we do, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so. We appear to have a plan.
Okay.
So I'm gonna move on. Nominations for educational support professionals negotiations. So these guys, this group has a 2-year contract, so we're up for negotiations with that group. The last negotiation cycle, I think it was Jack and Joanna, is that right? That worked on it as a team. Typically, we get a couple of board members, often 3 board members, who will work with our, our administration, our leadership, and also with the union, and plan sessions to hammer out the details of a successive contract. Success, I don't know, the next one. So are there any persons on our board that are interested in working on this? It's a great opportunity to learn a lot of stuff related to the contracts and school boards, school in general. Anybody interested? Jack, are you interested again?
Yeah, I'm interested, but if somebody else wants to chair that committee, that'd be fine. I mean, I'm willing to do it, so.
Okay.
I don't
Anyone
want to
else?
take away from somebody who's anxious to do it.
Joanna?
Sure.
I could be
Oh,
a third.
Carly, you're interested? Yay.
Sure.
Great. Thank you. Do we have a third person?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
Carly. Because
Okay.
Joanna,
Oh, so Joanna, you said yes?
I did.
Now forever hold your peace on that.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so Jack and Carly and Joanna, and we'll let you guys figure out who's going to be the lead person on that. So part of the process is we need nominations for the 3 of you to serve as our negotiators. So can I have a motion to appoint Jack, Joanna, and Carly as our negotiations team for ESP negotiations, please?
I'll move.
We got Mary.
Is there a second?
I'll
Charlie?
second.
Somebody?
Nicole got that.
There- Any more discussion? All right,
Congratulations.
those in favor, Charlie,
Yes.
Jack.
can I vote? Oh, yes?
Oh, yeah.
You're nominating the other 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think that was a yes, right, Jack?
Oh, yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Nilda, yes. All right, we have a team. Go forth and conquer. The next part is we have to send out a letter of intent to the union by October 1st. I can find the rest of my agenda here, excuse me, indicating our desire to enter negotiations, and that's just standard practice. We do that every time around. So we need to make that letter happen. We don't need action for that, do we?
It's listed as an action item.
Yeah, I thought it was. I just can't find it as an action item.
8C.
I will tell you, there'll be 2 amendments to the letter. Armand Messier should not be on this letter as a 2, it's to Nikki Hall. And Susan Detmeyer is no longer employed by
I was gonna say.
Vermont NEA. We will get the right UNICEF director on the bottom.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve sending out the letter to the NEA ESP negotiation team with the corrections needed.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Charlie?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes?
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Hilda? Yes. Okay. Now, moving on You know, I stapled my pages together and they got wonky, so excuse me for being an idiot here. The next items are here we go. So we have our committee for negotiations, so we're set to roll. So the next item is the VSBA annual meeting, and that's coming up on October 17th. It can be attended by Zoom, and we need to have a person who can we need to delegate a person as MRUSD's delegate to vote at the association's annual meeting on that date. We know for certain that Jack is going to that meeting, and we know that Bill is going. Is there anyone else going to that? So we could make a motion to have Jack be our delegate, with Bill being a alternate if necessary. Can we do that?
Should we have another person go?
We can have another person go. We can have a lot of people go.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be me, Jack, this is a separate one, but Jack, you're now on the full board, right, for VSBA?
Yes, I don't know how that works, because I'm now,
But you can represent.
yeah, I think I still could represent, but it wouldn't be.
Are we good with Jack, or is there anyone else interested? All right. I'd like to motion to designate Jack McCarthy as MRUSD's delegate to vote at the association's annual meeting on October 17th, 2024, please.
So moved.
I'll second that.
There's a second. Thank you. Discussion? No. Okay. Charlie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes,
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Hilda votes yes. Okay. We get to do that again. There's also a VSBIT annual meeting, and the VSBIT is the Vermont School Board Insurance Trust. And we need to have someone attend and cast MRUSD's vote.
that's on the
Authorize
the
that person
25th.
for a
Yeah,
proxy.
that's the meeting that's happening at the superintendent's school board conference.
Lake Maury.
It's actually been moved.
Oh.
No, it's just this year is for sure not going anymore.
We ready?
Does Jack
Yes?
wanna-
Well, we're seeing if Jack wants to do it.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay. Okay, so I need a motion to authorize proxy to. No, I need a motion to appoint Jack McCarthy as the MRUSD representative to appear and vote on its behalf at the end of all meetings of the members of the Vermont School Board Insurance Trust, or any adjustment thereof, or if no board member will be present, recommend a motion to authorize proxy to appoint as its true and lawful attorney, the board of directors of the VSBIT. Can I have that motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, Charlie,
Thank you, Jack.
Yes.
Jack,
Yes,
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Hilda votes yes. Well, that was fun. Next one is VHI. So VHI is the acronym for Vermont Education Healthcare Initiative. And we need to appoint an authorized representative to attend and cast MRUSD vote or proxy certificate of authority to have the board vote on MRUSD's behalf. And Jack, are you going to this too? Or willing to do this also?
Yeah, it's the same conference, so I'll be there, but
Okay,
somebody else.
All right. Anyone else?
Do it, if no one else is gonna do it.
okay. We got Jack. We need a motion for that. We need a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. Charlie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Hilda votes yes. Phew.
Are we
All right.
skipping Nakuma, by any chance?
Yeah, but
Say
it's
it again, please.
majority vote.
I think you're skipping Nakuma.
It's majority vote, it's fine. No, it's not.
You know, thank you for that, because when I added these numbers up, I said, I'm missing a person, and I went through. Nakuma, did you vote yes for everything so far?
Sure, yes, I did.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I apologize. I was going off a previous list, thank you. All right, other business, we have the warrants. The administration recommends a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of the motion will act as authorization and signature of any individual board member participating remotely. May I please have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Thank you. Discussion? Okay, Nakuma,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Jack,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Joanna,
Yes.
Carly,
Yes.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Hilda votes yes. Thank you. Next is our superintendent report.
I'm going to be brief as I can. One, you heard at the beginning of the board meeting as you came in that John and I are doing a weekly podcast. There's a link right off the top webpage. We're trying to get it down. Give us some grace. It's getting better each week, we hope.
First one was great.
I encourage you, well, thank you, Marianne, that's great to hear. Now you're pumping my ego. The
I
first one was
haven't
great.
seen the second one yet.
The second one came out, they're trying to come out Monday mornings. The other thing I would say is, we are having to go, as you heard earlier, I seated the students to ask us some questions, but if you think there's a good question for the community to hear an answer to or a comment, tap in at maplerun.org. You guys didn't use the tap for the mission vision, so we stole it. It's okay. You were trying to use it and didn't go in the mission and vision, so we were like, okay, we're taking that thing.
It hasn't been voted on.
Oh, you can take it back, so we.
You can use it all and tie it in.
That's right, that's right.
Well, the really hard ones should be addressed to Bill specifically.
Yeah,
Doesn't work like that.
The second thing is, last year you asked me, and I wasn't doing it every meeting, but trying to give you reports of what's going on. I now have a weekly newsletter that's posted on top of the website as well, that you'll see for those of you using SMORE. All our schools use SMORE for their daily announcements. So there's a weekly newsletter that comes out. Read it. And I was sharing just that with you, but let's share it with the whole community. So there's been 2 editions. Those come out usually Monday afternoons. Yeah, so Erin Rousseau has been a big help. This is all in that community engagement goal, so we're trying to get more out. There's more to come. There's a lot more. She's been really, really helpful on that.
So they send out, the administrative weekly blog. Will
Yeah.
it be linked to that by any chance?
That comes from BFA.
Yeah.
The-
Oh, right, I guess it's just.
That's BFA's,
Sorry.
and so what actually Erin's goal is to get that blog and all of she has everything but BFA, because they've been using, and I was the one that made the problem when I was the interim principal there. They're using a different software package to do that weekly blog, and we haven't wanted to stop it, but everyone else has moved to SMORE newsletter app, online, whatever it is, she knows about it. But we're trying to get those all in one place on the website. I know that's one of her goals, is to say, hey, if you want to know anything about any school, here are all the newsletters, just go right to them.
Great.
And the second thing, and I don't know, Erin or John, if you can pull up the board collaborative website. I wanted to show everything, show you guys something that is our yearly plan for the board. You've seen paper versions of it, but I just want to show you where it is. So you can see what's coming. It's a plan, so you may say, you know, you as a board or individual, you might say, hey, what if we change the order of this or added things to it? So under, John's getting it out. We tried to, and we're using this with the leadership team too for reports. But if you go up, you'll see in the, under other information under there, there's a board calendar of, not all of that, John. That first line. You click on that, you'll see something that has the location, the date. When are the district goal reports coming? You saw that kind of earlier. The work of the next two columns are topics for the board at that board meeting that we start to build the agenda off of. We also look at previous years, what are the things we, like this time we did all that stuff for those meetings. That always happens the second meeting in September. And then on the right, the topic under E are the educational sessions. And Aaron's done a nice job of highlighting those, so you can tell those aren't in public meetings, but those are educational sessions. And those are the topics that you chose, but we're going to check in with you. Like we'll check in on October 2nd. Is the attendance and school engagement something that you want to have on the 14th? Or is there some worker that we're doing and say, hey, we need to know more about X? And the reason I say it is because I can see us in the budgeting piece and you'll say, hey, we need to understand more. Can you teach us more about this part of the budget or the budgeting process? And, you know, so we're trying to keep off that list that you all worked on back in May and gave us an order and did a little survey on. These are in those order of importance that you gave us. So I wanted to be really deliberate and point this out to you. So if you see something and you don't see it up here, or you say, hey, what about this? Nilda and Charlie and I are all in a place of just either text us, call us, send us an email, say, hey, because we use this for the leadership team. I know Kelsey does it for her leadership team here, all the principals do in the building. And so it's a plan. So it's not set in concrete. It's like, this is the plan, and plans, a good plan gets messy. Because you cross things out, you add things in, you adjust timelines. So I just want, we're trying to do this for like all our work in Maple Run, be really transparent about what our plans are, but allowing them to be flexible.
Nilda had a really good idea at the last meeting, that if we could just, I don't know, maybe make the staff modeling and implementation red now that it's been completed.
Okay.
Because if we do change things or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean,
Yeah.
move things around, we'll know what we haven't gotten to yet, I
Okay,
guess.
yep, we can do that. Yeah, we can do some sort of highlight. I see Aaron doing his usual. It's my doc. He's the one who's controlling this document. We'll figure that out. Good point.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing I want to give you, which is probably the most important, I know we're trying to get out of here, and we have an executive session, but we had a homeless encampment at City School in the Woods. And as many of you have probably seen in the city, they've been dealing with this in the city as well. And the way they've had to deal with it in the city is to really get rid of the undergrowth and get the trees up to about 20 feet for branches. I've talked to a couple other superintendents who've had to deal with the same thing in their cities, and they've had to do the exact same thing. We are looking to do this at city and town forests in the back areas. We haven't had an encampment on town. If you read Facebook, you think we would, but we have not. We have not caught anyone out there. But we have had encampments, and I'm one of the first person, if you look, I wish I had my laptop out, you'd see the stickers that I have of how much I've taught environmental sciences. But if I have to compare that to student safety, I always will land on student safety. And what has been recommended to us is that we do that, so we're seeking out, we're gonna be the problem with city is we've got a wetland there, we're gonna be working with Cross Engineering, Peter Garceau, who's our consultant for anything like that, of what we can do and can't do in the wetlands, but we are gonna have to do quite a bit of thinning to ensure the safety of all our students. So, I wanted to let you know that. I'm sure you'll hear about it, it's been all over Facebook. The chatter's been pretty loud.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. Next item is board announcements. Are there any?
Yeah, I've got something, Nilda.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try to make this real quick. I'm in a group called Braver Angels. It's a group where people with different political persuasions meet together and we talk about neutral topics so that we learn to understand each other. And it's been a really good group. And each or every 4 years at the presidential election cycle, we put out a statement, and our committee wants us to get as many people to sign on to it, and then we publish it, like in the Messenger or whatever. And I'm gonna read you the statement, and if any of you agree with it or want to sign on, or if all of you agree and wanna sign on as a board without your individual name, we can do that. But you have to be either working in Franklin County or, as all our board members are, residents of Franklin County. So here's the statement.
So can I interrupt you just for a second?
Yep.
Is this kosher for us to be doing this?
Well, I asked Bill before the meeting.
He can read it. I'm not sure you should be if you're gonna take action as a board that you would do that tonight, but you can
Right,
read
I
it.
mean,
That's the part that sort of got to me. I think you're informing us. And that's great, but I don't, and if individuals want to sign off on it on their own time, that's okay. But I don't think as a board, we should endorse anything politically in a presidential election.
No, it's not, this is like neutral. I mean, you haven't heard the statement yet. The statement is not anything about
I understand.
Republican.
No,
I purposefully interrupted you before you read the statement because I didn't want to be affected by what you said.
So that's just where I'm at. I think you can definitely read it and individuals can do whatever they'd like to do on their own time, on their own dime, okay?
Well, to save time, would it be okay if I send this out to all the board members and you just send back yes or no to me? Would that be okay?
I would suggest you read it and people talk to you.
I
Okay.
would say read it.
Okay.
That
So-
makes me more nervous.
All right. So the title is We Stand Together for Democracy. We recognize that there are differences of opinion in Franklin County regarding the desirable outcome of the national election on November 5th. As Franklin County citizens, we are Americans first. Yeah, we are Americans first. We all have the power to be heard by voting for the candidate of our choice. We are confident that Vermont's elections are competently administered by towns in Franklin County. To have a healthy democracy, we need people to help out. We encourage you to be informed and involved. I apologize, my eyes aren't good for close-up. As Americans, it is our duty to protect our democratic, constitutional republic by ensuring a peaceful and fair election and a peaceful transition of power regardless of the outcome. To our communities, we strive to take care of each other and be the best in each other order regardless of the potential views. We invite you to believe in our best selves. Let's build a stranger, healthier, and more resilient community together. Anyway,
So Braver Angels wrote that.
correct.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
Any other board announcements?
Not an announcement, but I just think it's kind of cool that this is the first board meeting I've been to and that I can remember where everyone on the board who was present had something to say and provided input during the meeting. I just think that's kind of cool.
Thank you.
I would like to announce that, a few of us attended by Zoom the regional school board meeting, and MRUSD is part of the region with Franklin North. So I'm gonna get them wrong, but anyway, our little section of Vermont, and Jack McCarthy was elected to that board. So he is a representative on that regional board now. Yay, Jack.
I just want you to know that I'm kind of an upstart there. They'll be sorry they elected me, because in their evaluation, they asked for suggestions. And they had 3 presenters the other night at that meeting, but they never said what their credentials were. So my suggestion was, when you have presenters, give us, like they have 2 ladies that are going around the state evaluating schools, and we had no idea what their credentials are. They could be unbelievable PhDs in curriculum and education, but we don't know that. And they may never have been a teacher or a principal or superintendent. So I think when the School Boards Association presents people, they should tell us up front who they are and what their credentials are.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, agenda for future meetings. We had that list there, plus everything that we moved to future meetings tonight. Let me get my language correctly here. I need a motion to go into executive session. To move that item legal matter into executive session per VSA subsection 313A1, after making a specific finding that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial risk, a disadvantage. Will someone second that motion for me?
I'll second. Mary Ann?
Thank you. I need to call for a vote. Charlie?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes?
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Nakuma?
Yes.
Yilda. Next, I want a motion to enter into executive session to discuss that item on legal matters at whatever time it is, 8:18 p.m. Would someone second that motion for me?
I'll second it, Nakuma.
Thank you. We're gonna call for a vote. Charlie?
Yes.
Jack?
Yes?
Jessica?
Yes.
Joanna?
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Nakuma?
Yes.
Yilda votes yes. We're in executive session. Okay. We're no longer in executive session. The time is 8:25. Is there any more business to come before the board? Hearing none. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda.
Thank you all.